Take over, it's time to book it down. Make over, not... Ah, damn it, not again. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series on Persona 5 villains. Last time we covered the Bastard of Lust, Kamoshida, and following the strong introduction to the game that he brought us, we arrive at the art thief, Madarame.
You became acquainted with Madarame's pupil by chance? That's a little too convenient. It makes me wonder if you're even telling the truth. So be it. What I want to know most is your method. It's true that Madarame was an unforgivable criminal worthy of the scorn thrown at him. He was an adult who cultivated his own fame and fortune by sacrificing the livelihood of children. But he'd been covering his tracks for years. How did you uncover the truth in such a short span of time?
Madarame is a famous artist who has quite the following surrounding him. Everybody seems quite enamored with his art and his huge variety of styles, as well as how humble he seems to be. He also takes on a number of students to help nurture their artistic growth. According to him, the setting that he places himself in is how he manages to be so creative. His atelier is but a mere shack where his ideas well up naturally from within, and distancing himself from worldly desires such as money and fame allows him to pursue true beauty in his art. Or at least that's what he would have the public believe. Beneath the mask that he puts on, he abuses his students and constantly plagiarizes their work. The Phantom Thieves first hear about him in Mementos, when changing the heart of a man, Nakanohara, who had been stalking a coworker.
What about Madarame? He stole everything from me, but you're letting him off the hook?
After having his heart changed in Mementos, Nakanohara meets up with the Phantom Thieves several days later to give them some more information about Madarame. He had been a student with Madarame previously, but grew sick of having his art stolen by his teacher and left. Madarame used his connections to shut Nakanohara out of the art world, which was what sent him into a spiral of destructive behaviors. He also reveals a much more tragic case of Madarame's abuse, regarding another student a few years older than him. Everything this older student made was taken and claimed as a Madarame original, and eventually the older student grew frustrated with what Madarame was doing to him and took his own life. And finally, he gives us some information on Yusuke's ties to Madarame. We had met Yusuke a couple of times already by this point, and had some suspicions about his work being ripped off.
This one?
I guess it's the painter's anger? I'm not sure, but I sense this strong frustration from it. To think such a cheerful and gentlemanly person could make such a piece. Something wrong?
Don't mind me. There are better pieces than this one. Come now, this way.
Nakanohara pleads for the Phantom Thieves to change Madarame's heart. Not just for him, but to save the life of another one of Madarame's students, Yusuke. Yusuke feels like he owes Madarame for taking him in after his mother passed away, which makes him the perfect target according to Nakanohara. Heading off to the metaverse, Madarame's palace keywords are shack and museum. Unlike Shadow Kamoshida, Shadow Madarame doesn't actually appear during their first visit to the palace, but the Phantom Thieves do come across evidence of his crimes still. The first thing they come across is a gallery depicting all sorts of distorted paintings of students, with a placard indicating their name and age. The Phantom Thieves piece together that these were the current and former students that Madarame had under his tutelage. A couple rooms over, they find a sculpture titled The Infinite Spring, which depicts a bunch of teenagers, presumably representing his pupils. And this concludes the first visit to the palace. During the second visit, the Phantom Thieves don't discover anything too noteworthy, apart from noticing some very high levels of security, which Morgana notes that it means there's something worth protecting. To end off the second visit, they come across a door similar to a certain locked door in Madarame's shack, but the door is impossible to open from the outside. To continue on exploring the palace, they would have to force Madarame to see them open the door in the real world. Joker and Ryuji wait inside the palace while An and Morgana break into the room in the real world. Inside the room, An, Morgana, and Yusuke discover tons of copies of Madarame's iconic painting, Sayuri. Madarame claims that he's in severe debt and created copies of the Sayuri from a finely detailed photograph to sell, and that the original had been stolen by one of his pupils long ago. The theft had led to some terrible artist block, and because of his distress, some pupils decide to hand their ideas over to him from time to time.
As expectations for me rose, it reached a point where I had no choice but to keep making them. I needed money to further your talents. I ask that you please forgive your cowardly teacher.
All of this was quickly determined to be a lie, however, when An pulls a blanket off of an easel containing the original Sayuri. Backed into a corner, Madarame calls his private security company on An and Yusuke for trespassing, and the two of them flee into Madarame's palace to hide.
So this is inside of Sensei's heart? A vain museum such as this?
Yusuke recognizes the pupils in the distorted paintings to confirm what the Phantom Thieves had suspected earlier. While exiting the palace this time, Shadow Madarame makes his first appearance.
Welcome to the Museum of the Master Artist, Madarame!
Shadow Madarame reveals that his entire public-facing personality is nothing but a sham. The rags he wears regularly are just for show, and rather than living in his shack, he has another, more luxurious home, but under a mistress's name. He created the rumor of the Sayuri being stolen so that he could sell counterfeits of it to art snobs secretly for large amounts of cash. He reveals that he doesn't actually care about the art, but rather views it as a tool to gain money and fame. And finding young, talented artists was an easy way to plagiarize, as his pupils were in no position to fight back. He threatens Yusuke that going against him would be career suicide, as success in the art world would be near impossible if Madarame spoke against him. And we can look at Nakanohara being a prime example of this.
Let us now forge a contract. I am thou, thou art I. The world is filled with both beauty and vice. It is time you teach people which is which.
Very well. Come! Goemon!
After dispatching the guards sent at them by Shadow Madarame, Yusuke reveals some of his past to the Phantom Thieves. He of course knew about the plagiarism that Madarame was constantly committing, but mentally he was running from the truth, which was why he lashed out when the Phantom Thieves asked him about it. He felt he owed his life to Madarame and was struggling to admit that he was capable of such terrible acts. He viewed Madarame as a father for taking him and his mother in, and continuing to look after him when his mother passed away. He was glad to finally be able to face the truth he'd been running from his whole life, and decides to join the Phantom Thieves in their quest to change Madarame's heart. During their next visit, the Phantom Thieves navigate the rest of the palace, traversing the interior of some paintings, some MC Escher-esque stairs, and identifying fake Sayuris to make their way up to the treasure where they leave to send the calling card.
Surichiryusai Madarame, a great sinner of vanity whose talent has been exhausted. You are an artist who uses his authority to shamelessly steal the ideas of his pupils. We have decided to make you confess all your crimes with your own mouth. We will take your distorted desires without fail. From the Phantom Thieves.
Whose doing is this? It's those damn brats doing, isn't it? Well, it means nothing. They'll only be able to do as they please until this exhibit is over.
After an elaborate attempt to steal the treasure from under Shadow Madarame's nose, the Phantom Thieves discover that he had been expecting them, and replace the real treasure with a fake. He confronts them after they realize this, revealing that the only reason he took Yusuke in was due to his ties with his mother. He claims credit for Yusuke's mother and all of her works of art, and shows off the real Sayuri.
That's the real Sayuri?
It was not in fact a Madarame painting, but was actually painted by Yusuke's mother as a self-portrait holding a baby Yusuke.
I knew at first glance. I knew it'd be a huge success if I added a touch to the painting and announced it under my name.
By removing the baby from the painting, the woman's expression became a mystery, which the public would eat up and skyrocket Madarame's name within the art world.
Fox?
I've heard that you destroy your art once they outlive their usefulness. Did that include my mother as well?
Yusuke asks a very damning question of Shadow Madarame and receives a very uncomfortable answer. His mother had had a seizure in front of Madarame, but rather than call for help, Madarame realizes how he can take advantage of the situation. If she died, he would be able to steal and take credit for the Sayuri with ease, and her seizure was the perfect opportunity to capitalize on this. Yusuke was kept around after the fact to keep him from discovering the truth about the Sayuri. Once Yusuke's artistic talents had developed, Madarame came up with an idea to take his plagiarism even further. Students who couldn't fight back were a much easier target than adults, and so he thanks Yusuke for helping him come up with this idea. Yusuke chuckles and then thanks Shadow Madarame for getting rid of any sympathy that he had, and there was no longer any reason for him to consider forgiving Madarame. Shadow Madarame transforms into Azazel and attacks the party. He initially hides behind a series of paintings, but after the paintings are destroyed, Azazel enters the fray and summons copies of himself. The Phantom Thieves emerge victorious, and a defeated Shadow Madarame pleads for Yusuke to forgive him, but Yusuke is unconvinced. Yusuke orders him to return to reality to confess to his crimes.
What about the other one, though? The one with the black mask?
Wait, what?
I see. I was curious and looked into Kamoshida as well. It's as if he was an entirely different person. Will the same be true for Sensei?
Once his art exhibition ends, Madarame goes on TV to make an announcement.
I have committed crimes that are unbecoming of an artist.
He obeys the Phantom Thieves' instructions and admits to his plagiarism, including that of his iconic piece, the Sayuri. After his announcement, he turns himself into the police and is taken in for questioning. His treasure maintains its form of the unedited Sayuri once taken out into the real world, and Yusuke allows Sojiro to hang it up in LeBlanc.
asked him if he found it painful to stay with Madarame. And you know what he said? If I could leave, I would.
Madarame progresses the story into its second arc, and while he might not have quite the memorability of Kamoshida, I think he still paints quite a strong villain who has only gotten more relevant with time. The recent boom of AI-generated images since the end of 2022 have raised many concerns with plagiarism on such a large scale that Madarame's arc feels a lot more relevant now than it did when Persona 5 first came out. Everyone and their mother is now able to create images of almost whatever they desire at a moment's notice, but the models used to generate these images have received flack for issues related to plagiarism. The main concerns, at least with regards to plagiarism, are regarding the use of copyrighted material in their training sets, the possibility of directly replicating significant portions of the training images in the final product, as well as whether or not the final outputs are even copyrightable. And just as a disclaimer here, I'm not a lawyer, so take what I say here with a grain of salt, but with that being said, I'll be doing my best to make sure that I'm not spreading any misinformation. How these models work is that they scrape the internet for images and text associated with these images, and after enough data is collected, they're able to use text prompts in order to generate brand new images based on associations with the words used for the prompt. Many people have raised concerns with the use of copyrighted material in the data used to train these models, which raises the question of, is this all legal from the get-go? The primary defense, at least from what I've seen, that gets used in favor of AI images is fair use. So what exactly constitutes fair use? In the United States, there are 4 primary criteria which are considered when determining whether something falls under fair use or not. Number 1, purpose and character of the use. Is your new work commercial, and how transformative is it? Number 2, the nature of the copyrighted work. Was the original work non-fiction? Facts are unable to be copyrighted, so if you're borrowing from a non-fiction source, it's much easier to claim fair use. Number 3, amount and substantiality. Does your new work contain the original work in its entirety? And number 4, effect upon the work's value. Does your work impede the original work's or artist's potential to make money? Note that these criteria function more as guidelines as to whether or not fair use is a relevant defense, rather than strict criteria, and judges are able to consider other factors to determine if something is fair use or copyright infringement. If you want to see a case where the ruling was decided in favor of fair use, you can look into Matt Hossein-Zadeh versus Ethan and Hila Klein for an example of what goes through a judge's mind when determining fair use or not. Now, as I said, I'm not a lawyer, and nor am I going to claim to have any substantial understanding of AI and how fair use will apply to it, so I'm going to link a Legal Eagle video in the description where he goes over his interpretation of things, if you want the opinion of someone with a bit more knowledge than I. Professor Daniel Gervais, a teacher of law at Vanderbilt University, has this to say. It is much more likely than not that training systems on copyrighted data will be covered by fair use, but the same cannot necessarily be said for generating content. In other words, you can train an AI model using other people's data, but what you do with that model might be infringing. Think of it as the difference between making fake money for a movie and trying to buy a car with it. As of the making of this video, this is a question without a concrete answer. There are several ongoing cases, including Getty Images versus Stability AI, and Sarah Anderson, Kelly McKernan, and Carla Ortiz versus Midjourney, Stability AI, and DeviantArt, to keep an eye on and see what precedent gets set for the legality of it all. And as for the last question of whether AI works can be copyrighted, that answer is a hard no, as copyright only applies to works created by a human being. In August 2023, computer scientist Stephen Thaler tried to get works created by his AI model Daboose copyrighted, but was denied on the grounds of copyright must contain human creativity.
No one cares for true art. All they want are easily recognizable brands.
This statement by Madarame has some truth to it, albeit maybe a bit oversimplified. Going back to our last point about AI, a lot of people have shown to not particularly care about the creative process and are willing to churn out whatever custom images of their favorite characters that they want on demand. However, despite what Madarame seems to be insinuating, a desire for easily recognizable brands isn't necessarily a bad thing. In a world with countless sources of entertainment constantly vying for our engagement, having to sift through everything to find a diamond in the rough can be a very daunting task. Not everyone wants to spend all of their free time scrolling the YouTube homepage, just as an example, aimlessly looking for entertainment, and YouTube knows this, so they provide us with a subscribe button so that we can curate what gets shown to us. Which you should take a couple seconds to scroll down and click, by the way. Imagine you just got home after a rough day at work, went through a bad breakup, or it just hasn't been your day, week, month, or even year. You might just want something that you know will be there for you. Whether that's your favorite TV show, favorite type of ice cream, or favorite live streamer, having something comfortable that you can fall back on in stressful times can beat out constantly having to spend brain power searching for comfort. And furthermore, not everybody is knowledgeable enough in all forms of art to understand, quote-unquote, true art for every single medium. As someone who's played multiple instruments throughout his life, I'm likely to pick up on a number of nuances that a musician may have put into their piece, but when it comes to painting, I don't know enough to understand all of the less obvious creative decisions or inspirations, and am instead going to be more enamored solely by the end result rather than the whole creative process. Madarame's palace keywords were museum and shack. Obviously, this means he has distorted views towards what his shack is, but what does the museum part entail? An art museum is where collections of art are gathered to be put on display, so if Madarame views his shack as a museum, it either has to have something to do with displaying or sourcing his art pieces. The first area of the palace that we see is a gallery showcasing paintings of his pupils, but the placard that would usually show the artist's name and title of the painting instead has the name of the student alongside their age. Following this gallery, we come across a sculpture titled The Infinite Spring.
A conglomerate work of art that the great director Madarame created with his own funds. These individuals must offer their ideas to the director for the rest of their lives. Those who cannot do so have no worth living?
The sculpture depicts some teenagers, presumably Madarame's pupils, clearly distressed, and the placard talks about how they're indebted to Madarame and how their life has no value unless they continue to feed their ideas to Madarame. So we can return to our previous question and conclude that the reason Madarame views his shack as a museum is because it's where all of his art is stored, and when he needs some art to present to the public or use in an exhibition, he could simply return to the Museum of Madarame and pick out a new piece. The next thing of note is a series of paintings deep inside the palace, where we hear Madarame's voice narrate some of his thoughts as we navigate our way through them. The desert painting represents how Madarame views the world as idiots unable to appreciate art correctly. The shrine shows that Madarame likens himself to a god and desires to be worshipped in a similar manner. The forest demonstrates that he views youth as fools who don't understand that they're in the peak years of their talent, and that he's not wrong for coaching them the way that he is. The ocean demonstrates a lack of consideration for anyone who has helped him to achieve the reputation he has today. And finally, the mansion shows that Madarame is a hypocrite to top it all off.
No one cares for true art. All they want are easily recognizable brands.
Betraying the message in his first painting and our entire previous point, He admits that the art he's producing is meaningless beyond providing him with the money and status needed to achieve his lifestyle. And finally, we have the boss fight with Madarame.
Those who have the connections make the rules. Those who don't, follow them. Not to mention, the value of art is all subjective. I make the rules in the art scene. I am the supreme being. I am the god of the art world.
This isn't good. Get back!
Similar to Kamoshida, Madarame takes on the name of a demon for his boss fight, and in his case, he transforms into the fallen angel Azazel. Azazel starts off by summoning 4 paintings to hide behind, but fights the Phantom Thieves himself once the paintings are destroyed. The first thing Azazel does once he enters the fight is cast True Fake, creating different colored versions of himself, demonstrating one method of plagiarism, taking an existing piece of work and ever so slightly changing it to pass it off as your own. In this case, the color. This is demonstrated again with the spells that both the paintings and the copies of himself cast. They have their own unique names: Maelstrom, Thunderclap, Flame Dance, and Silent Snowscape, but they are functionally equivalent to the mid-level single-target spells of their respective element, and even share the same animations. Finally, as the fight goes on, the copies that Azazel summons have a chance to spawn in asleep and with low HP. This could represent his laziness and complacency with his situation. Madarame has long abandoned art creation for himself, and with his back against the wall, he struggles to even demonstrate the ability to copy correctly and comes up with these shoddy clones. And as for the treasure, it retains the same form in both the real world and the metaverse as Madarame's signature piece, the Sayuri. Madarame likely sees it as a turning point for him, as it was what caused him to get his big break and shift to his current model of exploiting students for profit. Madarame is the odd one out of the original Persona 5 villains. His associated sin isn't considered one of the modern 7 deadly sins, but he instead represents vanity, or vainglory, which used to be included in older lists of deadly sins, but Pope Gregory has since consolidated it under pride. Madarame tries to hide this part of him from his public-facing persona, as during the interview at his exhibition he acts very humble, claiming he lives in a shack, and emphasizes that his creativity shines from his ability to distance himself from worldly desires. The reality, however, is the exact opposite. Shadow Madarame scorns the ideals that Madarame preaches. The ragged attire he wears is nothing more than an act to garner sympathy. Rather than actually live at his shack, he of course has another, more lavish house, but under a mistress's name. Fitting with Madarame's association with vanity, his palace is the first one where we encounter a treasure demon. Treasure demons are based on noteworthy or expensive gemstones, jewelry, or significant rocks, and the one found in Madarame's palace is named Regent. Mechanically, treasure demons are special personas that are unusable in combat, but are particularly useful in fusion, as they allow you to fuse personas into other personas of the same arcana, which is otherwise not possible. They also come with useful skills to pass on when fusing, with Regent in particular having the area of effect versions of all of the rank 1 elemental spells. In the real world, the Regent diamond was supposedly found by a slave worker in the Kolar mine in India, and he smuggled it out by cutting open his leg and hiding the diamond in the injury. He would make it to the coast where he would meet an English captain who he struck a deal with to split the profits off of selling the diamond. However, the captain would murder the slave and run off with the gemstone. In 1717, the diamond would be purchased by the French regent Philippe II for use by the French royalty. It would be used in the crowns of various monarchs such as Louis XV, the 16th, and Marie Antoinette, as well as being embedded in the hilt of Napoleon Bonaparte's sword. Today, it is on display in the Louvre with an estimated value of 48 million euros as of 2015. Madarame's demon name during his boss fight is Azazel, who seems to have slightly ambiguous origins. The earliest mentions of Azazel are in the book of Leviticus 16:8. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for Azazel. The first goat was intended to be a sacrifice to the Lord as a sin offering, while the other goat was to be sent off into the wilderness as a punishment to atone for any sins that Aaron may have inadvertently committed. Different sources have translated this sentence differently, however. The modern interpretations seem to translate it the way I just read, with Azazel implied to be the name of a deity. However, other, older translations have translated Azazel to mean scapegoat, which is actually the origin of this word, or as the name of the mountain where this ritual was said to have taken place. In the Book of Enoch, Azazel is one of the Watchers, who would become fallen angels after their descent to Earth to lust after human women. Their lust for human women would lead to the birth of a new race of beings, the Nephilim, or giants. Additionally, the fallen angels would impart forbidden knowledge onto the humans, with Azazel personally being responsible for teaching them about blacksmithing, mining, and jewel crafting. With this new forbidden knowledge, the humans grew arrogant and sinned relentlessly, causing the archangels to intervene. Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel saw all of this new bloodshed and lawlessness and appeared before God to judge the humans. Each of the archangels were given their own missions by God, with Raphael being sent to deal with Azazel. Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein. And place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever. And cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. As for how Azazel relates to vanity, well, he doesn't. At least not as far as I can tell. Searching Google for Azazel vanity only brings up Persona-related results, and a furniture website for some reason. The fandom wiki has this to say about Azazel being a fitting choice for Madarame. Azazel is credited with teaching the techniques for blacksmithing weapons and the art of cosmetics, especially makeup and mascara. This fits with Madarame being a formerly skilled painter who now parasitizes his own students for the sake of his vanity. To me, it doesn't really feel like the strongest connection to make, but I struggle to find any other notable connections between the two, so I guess I'll settle with what fandom has to say for now. Let me know if you have any other ideas about a connection between Azazel and Madarame. Madarame's will seed guardian is Arahabaki. Arahabaki is a very mysterious deity, with a lot of misinformation being spread about him, so accurate details are very tough to come by. Its design in the Megami Tensei franchise is based on that of the Shakoki Dogu, likely stemming from a set of forged documents called the Tsugaru Soto Sengunshi. The in-game description doesn't really clear anything up. It mentions Arahabaki was worshipped by Nagasune Hiko, who was defeated in battle by Emperor Jimmu, and came to be treated as a symbol of rebellion and defiance. The only problem with this is, as far as I can tell, Nagasune Hiku was a fictional person, and even Emperor Jimmu's existence is a debated topic. And outside of a series of stories titled Jimmu's Eastern Expedition, there's no English information available on him that I was able to find. The Megami Tensei fandom page claims that the real Arahabaki is able to heal medical problems in the lower half of the body, and claims that it is sometimes associated with ironworks, but following their citation links to the homepage of a Japanese website, so I cannot verify the source. I think Arahabaki is an appropriate guardian for Madarame's final will seed, although it took a while for me to connect all the dots. While not plagiarized, that Tsugaru Soto Sengunshi was still fraudulently created, and that leaves us with the fraudster Madarame's coalesced will, guarded by this false god assuming the name and authority of Arahabaki. Similar to Kamoshida, Madarame's character seems to take some inspiration from real people, although again, we're probably not going to be seeing any confirmation from Atlas on the matter. Madarame's iconic piece, the Sayuri, bears heavy resemblance to a piece titled Yamanba and Kintaro Sakazuki by Japanese artist Kitagawa Utamaro. Additionally, in earlier drafts of the script, Madarame's name seems to have been Ichitaro, which is also Utamaro's birth name. And in terms of his plagiarism, fans have drawn connections between Madarame and two people, Mamoru Samuragochi and Yoshihiko Wada. Mamoru Samuragochi was supposedly a modern Beethoven. He claimed to be deaf by the age of 35, but continued on as a composer until his ghostwriter Takashi Niigaki admitted that he had been writing Samuragochi's music. In 2014, one of his songs was used by Japanese figure skater Daisuke Takahashi at the Sochi Winter Olympics, when Niigaki came clean, claiming that Samuragochi threatened suicide if he didn't write for him, and admitted to the ghostwriting as he didn't want to risk seeing Takahashi's name dragged into the mix as a co-conspirator. Yoshihiko Wada was a Japanese painter who was exposed for plagiarism in 2006. In March of that year, he had received the Education, Science, and Technology Minister's Art Encouragement Prize, but shortly after, the Japanese Artists Association received a tip regarding the authenticity of Wada's paintings. Many of his works bore striking similarities to those of an Italian painter, Alberto Sughi. Wada claimed that he had known Sughi from his studies in Italy in the 70s, and that his paintings were either homages to Sughi or painted as part of a collaboration. Sughi, however, denies knowing Wada was an artist, and thought he was merely a fan of his who just enjoyed visiting his gallery and taking photos of his work. When Sughi learned about the allegations, he did note an uncanny resemblance to his work in over 30 of Wada's paintings. A special review panel was held to investigate the plagiarism allegations, with the conclusion being that Wada had not provided sufficient evidence to prove that no theft had occurred, and his award was stripped in June 2006. And so we have Samuragochi's behavior accounting for the ruse that Madarame puts on. His story as a deaf composer was a very sympathetic one, which certainly worked to his benefit to get his name out there. Madarame's humble persona, dressing up in rags and living in a mere shack is a solid analog to this, as it helps paint Madarame's name in a positive light. And obviously, Wada's plagiarism accounts for the other half of Madarame, part of him that uses other people as tools in order to get what he wants. And finally, we have one more real-life analog to Madarame. After having his heart changed, he appears on national television to give his apology, where he is seen bawling his eyes out. This scene has drawn comparisons to Japanese politician Ryutaro Nonomura, who is accused of misusing public money for personal travel expenses. When questioned about it during a press conference, Nonomura broke down and started crying and banging on the desk in a manner similar to Madarame during his confession. Alright, I know that Kamoshida ended up appearing again, but that's just unlucky, right? What are the odds that happens twice in a row?
No. Madarame.
And before you go, I've started streaming over at twitch.tv/VG_villains. Link in the description. Streams start at around 10 p.m. Pacific time, aiming to be live around 4 times per week. As of the time of uploading this video, I'm currently working on a playthrough of Persona 3 Reload, so stop by and say hi if you're interested. And feel free to suggest any other games you'd like me to check out and potentially make a video on.